And apparently not knowing what a Q is, I'm Joe Concha.
You got to get a cue to know a cue.
That's true. That's true. And next to me is somebody who is not a cue ball yet. You're keeping your hair quite nicely.
Oh,
it's
thank
Rick
you
Ungar.
so much. And I haven't even been through makeup, so how do you like that?
Yeah, no, you haven't, have you? and it's showing. My apologies for those out there with large HD TVs for having to look at both of us here at the Steve Malzberg Show. Also joining us via audio is Republican strategist Ron Christie. Ron, can you hear me?
Hey, Ron.
I'm here.
All right, excellent. How are you?
Good, brother. What's shaking?
Can I say something for the record before we begin?
I have no choice.
Ron, it's been 2 weeks, and you still owe me lunch.
Rick, you know, what are you doing tomorrow?
I don't know. I got to look.
Why don't you look, and why don't you and I look into going over to Del Frisco's or something?
Oh, we got him on tape, guys. We got him on tape. He's taking me to Del Frisco's.
I was about to, you guys look more like Arby's guys to me, you know, or Chuck E. Cheese.
Well, if I were buying, it'd be Arby's. But since Ron is buying, it's Del Frisco's, baby.
Del Frisco's, for those of you outside of this New York area, you get one drink there, and I'm not talking a beer, I'm talking about something with ice, and it's a $16 excursion before you even get the tip. So
if you're lucky.
Yeah, so it's good to be with the richest 1% here. Thanks, guys. So this segment, we're talking about the top stories of the day. And I got to be honest with you, we were talking before, it's a slow news day.
It is.
Let's face it. So we're going to leave with a poll, of all things, which my news instincts and being a former producer, kind of not supposed to have polls lead. But in this case, it's so interesting, I can't stay away from it. There's a new poll out from The Economist and YouGov.gov. And basically, they're saying that they asked Obama voters if they could vote for the president again, would they? And 71% of Obama voters, these aren't Republicans, these are Obama voters, said they would not vote for Mr. Obama again. 26% said they wouldn't. 3% aren't sure. So I'll kick off with you, Rick, since you're with me.
Do you have to? You can't trust polls? No. Look.
Well, let me poll you. I would suspect that you voted for the president. Would you do it again if given the opportunity?
Yeah, I probably would, but at the same time, I cannot sit here and say that I'm shocked by the poll. There is a palpable measure of discontent with the president. It makes, as much as I may not be happy about it, there's no sense in denying it. We all know it's there. The why, I think, has a lot to do with the rollout of the Affordable Care Act. It was really bad. It didn't roll out well. I think people are concerned. They were concerned going in. We all know that. Now they're really concerned. I think that's unfortunate because I do support the law. I don't support the way the law was introduced to the public, but I do support the law. But yeah, add all of that to the usual doldrums of the second term, he's not in the best position.
Ron,
I'm sure Ron will disagree with me and say he's in great shape, right?
Ron, it's funny, when you look at all the other scandals that came up, particularly in the last year, when we talked about NSA and IRS and Benghazi and AP wiretapping and James Rosen, I could go on and on. Yet you looked at his poll numbers, and it was always 46, 47, 48%. Not horrible for a second term, but it seemed like when Obamacare came about, and the way that Rick was just describing, the rollout and the disengagement by the president that's been revealed afterwards that he really wasn't involved all that much. Is that why we're seeing such a drop? A, in his poll numbers down to around 40%, but B, this incredibly shocking poll that 71% of people who voted for him wouldn't vote for him again. Am I answering your question for you, or can you expand on this a little bit?
Let me expand on that for you a little bit, Steve. I think the very interesting thing that you find here is that the American people, as it related to President Obama, everything with him was always going to be in the future. Well, you're going to have to see how my health care law rolls out. You're going to enjoy it. You're going to have lower premiums. You're going to have greater options. And, of course, we'll cover more folks. Well, once the enrollment date came and went, and it was a disaster beyond anyone's imagination, I think the American people realized that so much of the president's administration has been about things that he was going to do and how great things were going to be in the future. And this was an opportunity where they saw how bad things actually were for them. Premiums went up, coverage went down, and a lot of people, millions of people lost their coverage. But when I look at this poll, and one other thing that I would add to this is you look at the state of Minnesota that now says that President Obama is underwater in popularity popularity there. I took the train with Al Franken from D.C. up to New York several weeks ago, and he's worried about his reelection, thinking that the president is so unpopular, even in a blue state, that he, Al Franken, could be in jeopardy of getting reelected. So I think that shows you how people are really disenchanted with the president and his leadership.
Rick, if you, by every objective viewpoint, I'm sure yours included in this, that there's no way the Democrats take back the House.
It's hard to imagine.
Hard to imagine that. The Senate is
up
where...
for grabs. Up
Six
for
seats.
grabs.
Six seats only have to go one way or the other.
It could happen. You know, it's interesting. If you asked me the way I'm looking at the numbers, I actually would put it at better than 50-50. Some of my very esteemed Democrat colleagues who are very good at this don't believe that it will happen. I don't know if they're looking at numbers differently. I don't know what it is. I think to pretend that it's not a real possibility would be foolish. The impact, however, is not what everybody seems to think it would be. It just means 2 more years of absolutely nothing getting done. And considering that the Republicans in the House have stopped anything from getting done anyhow, I'm not sure it matters.
Ron, is that where you have the number at, about 50-50 Republicans take back the Senate, or you have it a little bit better? I would imagine a little better.
I've got a little bit better. I'd probably say it's about 75%. When you find, I do. I think when you have candidates such as Mary Landrieu down in Louisiana, and you have Kay Hagan, who's running for re-election in North Carolina, making sure that they're anywhere but by the president's side, I think that not only are those folks in red states who are Democrats going to lose in their re-election bids, but I think that we're going to have some surprising states. I would look at Oregon, I would look at Minnesota, I would look around the country and say, if you're a Democrat running for re-election, how safe are you in this Obamacare climate? And I think the answer to that is not very.
Well, one place where I say you have to be a little bit careful, Ron, and I know you know this, is to make sure you localize the races. Look, you know, Mary Landrieu is a great example. Yeah, she's doing everything possible to distance herself from the president. If you take a national approach to her local election, I can see where you get there. But you and I both know that her last name is pretty magical when you get down there to Louisiana, and defeating her is no easy chore, no matter how unpopular the president might be in Louisiana, and I grant you that he's pretty unpopular there. I think the same. I think it's going to be very hard for Al Franken to get beat. He may be nervous about it, but I think it's much closer to the 50-50 because of those reasons.
Hey, Ron, about 45 seconds. You're a Republican strategist, but if you had to advise Democrats on how to run in this election and run away from Obamacare, or at least isolate yourself or insulate yourself from any attacks that you have, how do you go about doing that as a candidate if you're a Democrat in a blue state?
Well, I think if you're a Democrat in a blue state, I think what Rick actually said is exactly spot on. I think that the old adage from former House Speaker Tip O'Neill that all politics is local is what's in play here. I would stress my independence from Washington. I would stress my ability to work well with the other side and talk about what their positive agenda is moving forward, rather than playing defense and really trying to extricate themselves from Obamacare. So they have a tough mountain to go, but I think that Rick is right. I think that there are some Democrats who will hang on because they're able to localize their election.
I hope we have that on tape. I'm not sure I've ever heard those words from Ron's mouth. Rick is right.
And we have that on tape.
This is historic.
Yes, and I'm sure you're going to find an MP3 in your email box repeating that over and over again. So thank you, Ron and Rick. We're going to come back with both of you in just a moment. I'm Joe Concha, filling in for Steve Malzberg. It's the Steve Malzberg Show on a sunny Tuesday here in New York.
The Steve Malzberg Show.